What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with James Van Praagh. Now, James is the #1 New York Times bestselling author and arguably the most famous and successful medium of our time. Now, James is world renowned for his extraordinary ability to communicate with the spirits of men, women and children who have passed on. He has been the host of his own television show, Beyond, and a featured guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Larry King Live, and countless other radio and television shows for the past 30 years. Now, James has spoken to thousands of people through his lectures, demonstrations, and spiritual tours. James Van Praagh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate you having me.
I am so honored and thrilled to have you on. You have no idea how pumped I am for this interview. I can't believe it's you.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
It's funny, this interview, right? I've been churning it over all day. I was at the gym thinking about it. I was like, what are we going to talk about? There's so much we could talk about.
It's true. Whenever I do an interview with somebody, whatever, for many, many years now, there's a certain bullet points that the interviewer want to cover, and it always ends up that we just go off on our own tangents because once you meet each other, other things come into your heads, and I love being spontaneous like that. So whatever you want to talk about is fine.
Okay, it's going to go all over the place. I know 51 minutes with a guy with your background. Did you ever think that you'd write so many books?
It's funny, Kevin. So you're going to ask me questions, which are great questions that American DJs and talk show hosts don't ask. So thank you already. I never really had an idea how many books I would write. But as we're speaking right now, I just took a break I'm writing a book called The Guidebook. And I'm actually kind of in the middle of it. And it's my 14th book. And I never, ever thought I would write that. I never thought I'd be a writer. So I'm surprised, but there's so much information, of course, that even when Lifetime couldn't do anything. But I'm, scratching the surface. So I love writing. It's another way of teaching and getting the word out. So, yeah, and every one of my books is very different, like different children. Like each one is a different child, different subject. And the funny thing about the book, Kevin, is each book that I do, I have kind of an outline what I'm going to write. But just like this interview, I just let spirit take over. Whatever needs to come out, comes out. And that's how most of my books are written.
That's what I like about you. I like a lot of things about actually your energy. You know, I have a lot of different guests come on. You've got a very nice energy. You know, you're very well known. You've been on many high level talk shows as well, and that could make you, you know, could have affected you in a sense, but it hasn't. You're just you. There's nothing. There's no ego.
Thank you for recognizing that, and I really appreciate that, because once again, back at you. There are a lot of chat show hosts and radio hosts who don't see that, and they're into their own thing, and you're open to see that. So I appreciate that, and I agree with you. I'm pretty down to earth. I'm a very real person, and for some people that's not a great thing to see, because when they meet me, they go, "Oh, you're not what I thought you are. You're very, very different. You're kind of funny, and you're kind of real." And I'm like, well, I don't know what you expected, but yeah, this is it. This is what you get.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. No, there's
sorry to disappoint, but this is it.
Absolutely. No, there is yeah. I see the funny side with you as well. That's nice that you've got that ability as well, because I think with your work it can be so very serious sometimes, because you know these are people's lives. You know,
when you talk to dead people, you need some levity. You know.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I first came to the UK many years ago with Tony Stockwell, my good friend, medium, and I'd never worked with a UK audience, and I think one of the first experiences was Blackpool, and I remember I came out, and it was at the end of the pier, at a theater out there, and I came out dancing, which I do in the States. I come out dancing a little bit, and people and they were shocked, and they've never seen that before. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but that's the way the American guy does it. And even the people over here don't do it that way. But for me, I come out dancing, not always, but sometimes. The reason why I do that is not only that I'm just crazy, but I want to bring the energy up of the audience. Because as you say, a lot of people come to these experiences where they're depressed, where they're afraid, they're fearful, they're not sure what's going to happen. This is against, this is the devil, whatever mindsets and belief systems that they come in with. And really what we're doing, because what it says to me, is really opening up that energy, opening up that space, and taking away the fear. So if we can take their attention away from the fear and and just lighten it up and throw them for a second, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It'll take them out of that space of fear. And once they see that, he's just kind of a normal guy, he's fun, he's kind of crazy, and then I can get into the teaching, and then we get into the spirit messages.
Absolutely, which is just the place they need to be in that process as well. And that obviously is, that's time spent, time learnt, that the whole, you didn't just walk into this career. Just tell us a bit, because I think you were quite skeptical initially, weren't you? You was quite a skeptical person.
I was very skeptical as a child. I used to see spirit all the time as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Most children, all children, I think, are very, very open, because they've just come from the spirit world. As a soul, they've just come from that world into this incarnation, into this body. So for me, my belief is that their mind is still very much of that mindset of the spirit world, where anything is possible. They can see, they're clairvoyant, they see energy, they see colors around people, which we call the auric field. And I think, they become programmed probably around the age of 6, 7, 8 from the adults or society, saying you have to behave a certain way, or you have to act a certain way to receive love, or whatever it might be. So in a way, they kind of change who they are to fit into society, to fit in what the parents want. And they let go of that magic of who they are. And then they forget, and they spend the rest of their lives trying to find themselves that they gave up when they were 6 or 7. And that's the sad thing. And, it says, in order to get in the Bible, in order to get to the gates of heaven, forgive me, I'm paraphrasing, in order to get to the gates of heaven, you have to be like a child. Which to me, that means you've got to have that innocence, that purity, to really be that. And to me, as you can see, I've never given up being a child. I love the wonderment of it. But so I have that. But getting involved in mediumship, I was skeptical to a point where I'm like, does this really work? Because I grew up Catholic, very, very Catholic. I was actually going to be a priest, believe it or not. And I studied, and I guess I knew on some level I had to serve humankind in some way. And I guess I thought that way. But interesting story, when I was 14 years of age. And I was in this preparatory seminary saying our prayers, which every student has to say these prayers at a certain time. And I remember I heard a voice say, God is much bigger than these 4 walls. You need to find God outside these 4 walls. And I knew that I heard that voice very clearly. So I left the seminary, went to a New York public high school, which was the best experience I ever had. But as I grew up, yeah, I was very skeptical. Even when I first, my first medium that I saw from England, and he was in the States, and he said things to me that only people that passed over would know, that I had to find out. I didn't even know at the time that I had to ask questions and found out. There were so many truths about his messages that I did question things, and I studied. I must have read over 200 or 300 books and papers, and it was real. And I remember this reminded me that, when I was a little boy, I used to know these things or do things. So I started meditating. And I didn't even know how to meditate formally, but I just stilled the mind and just went back to when I was a child. And that's really when it all started. And then I couldn't deny what I was seeing and feeling. And
No, absolutely not. And it's through that meditative state. People, there's a lot of different guests I have on, and it seems to be that the common thread is that through that a way through is meditation, to bring through that voice. Now, whether it's your voice you hear when you meditate, or whether it's just a knowing as well, but let's stick with the voice right now. If it's your voice that's coming through when you're meditating and you're asking a question, that most times is a spirit connection.
So let's just open this up even further, because I think that when you go into that altered state of consciousness, which is really what meditation is, prayer is, mindfulness is, to me, you're having a communion with your soul. And it's really your soul, which is within this body, I would say, the soul self that you're really connecting with, that soul self. Within the soul is the spirit, that essence, that power, which are connected to the universal power. So to me, that's really what you're opening up into, that oneness, if you will. And of course, we have to quiet that human mind that's always chattering, and that's the hard part for a lot of people. Once you learn to surrender, though, and you do it for a little while, you can just get right into that space of the knowingness, of the stillness, of the calmness. And I'll tell you, Kevin, that to me is worth its weight in gold, just to get into that stillness of being. And I teach people to meditate. I teach people how just to be. We're human beings. We're not human doers. We're human beings. So we just have to learn just to be with ourselves and let all that other stuff go away. And part of that, of course, is that mindfulness awareness that the past has already happened. There's nothing we can do about that. The future is yet to be. And all we have is this moment now. So if we just started from that point of view, it's halfway in.
Absolutely. This moment now and the surrender to it is so important, isn't it? But you have to learn to get to that place. It's your process to experience whatever it is you need to experience to get to that place as well. And when I mentioned earlier on, when I said that meditation is a way in to connect to spirit, I suppose what I would really want to say, really, if I was going to go deep into it, is it's a way to connect to your oversoul or your higher self.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. And yes, you're exactly right. It's connecting with your spirit, your higher self. And to me, and this might be easier for a lot of your listeners to, people that are watching this to understand, that to me, like spirit communication is my spirit communicating with the spirit. So I'm a spirit incarnate in the body. And the spirit world, they're discarnate. They're outside the body, but they're next to us. And how do they get through to the physical person? Well, to me, the soul is the mind is the soul. And the mind continues on, of course, after physical death, because it's not physical. The brain dies at physical death, that's physical. But the mind continues on. And within that mind, there's all the memories, experiences, life experiences of this lifetime and other lifetimes, just saying. And really what happens then, of course, we know that the spirit world will come close to that medium through a process of slowing down their vibration or their frequency and projecting thoughts, feelings, images into the auric field of the medium and really work at telepathy, if you will, telepathic communication. And the more that human medium can still themselves, surrender, then they'll be able to hear those impressions from the spirit.
Absolutely. And that process which you're describing there, that took you years to define and years to get right. It wasn't just a case of, I've opened up now, I've kind of walked through a door and I can, I know I'm connected to a higher dimension or level, and I think I'll just go out and do some readings. It took you years, didn't it, to really hone in on this?
Yes, and a good friend of mine is a medium in England named Mavis Patilla, who you might have heard of. Mavis Patilla, and she worked with a very well-known, very well-known in spiritual circles, named Gordon Higginson, who there's a college, Arthur Findlay College in Stansted, that is really where he really worked with students and worked with Mavis. And it's very, very interesting, but Mavis and I had a long talk, and this is on the YouTube, people can look it up. But we discussed mediumship nowadays and mediumship in the older days, And when I started, Kevin, I set for every Tuesday night for 2 hours, every Tuesday night in silence, sitting in silence to develop the if you will, the nuances, the essence, to have the spirit work with my energetic field, how to discern between my own thoughts, the human, and that of the spirit. And to me, it's a responsibility, and it's a great responsibility. And it's like if you're a medical doctor or a lawyer, legal work, or you have to sit you have to go to 8 years of schooling. The minimum someone should go for mediumship development for me is 8 years, but we're always learning every single day. A medium has to be willing to realize they're the student every day. They're always learning. They never know it. And the thing which really, as we say in America, pisses me off, which is my New York background, but really upsets us in mediumship who've been around for a while, is that people want a fast fix, a quick fix. And nowadays with society, and I've seen it in my own world where they take a class of mine and next thing you know, they're out there doing readings for people and they're not prepared. And it's like, they don't even know the difference between a psychic and a medium. And they say they're a medium, but yet they're doing psychic readings. And it's like, that just is so irresponsible, and it's a slap in the face to the spirit world, to the living people. And that's a real hard one for us who've been around for a little bit to watch that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyone that wants to get into this, just listen to what James has got to say. There is a process here, not just for your own self, but for those you're going to give readings to as well, because you don't want the reading to come from ego. You don't want it to come from just yourself. You want it to come from, even if it's coming from your higher self, that's a connection then to the spirits that will connect with you for that person.
It's true. I started last May, a year ago, a school called the James Van Praagh School of Mystical Arts, and I did that for many, many months. I put together 64 videos and homework and assignments based upon 30 years of doing this work. And it's a very intense 8-week course. And people who sign up, it's not for the faint of heart here. It's a really heavy-duty course. But you have to have that level of commitment if you're going to be involved in this sort of work, because this work changes people's lives. The work of a medium is really to empower, not to really destroy. And if they don't have the proper tools, they might not do it the right way and hurt somebody.
Absolutely. Now, when you connect as well, do you think sometimes if you're not connecting with your higher self, your oversoul, are you connecting with your spirit guides in a sense?
So funny, you must be very psychic. I know you are psychic, but 'cause let me put it this way: it's really going into, and it's always very difficult for us to sometimes define it, because we're in a three-dimensional human world, and we're placing human laws and human perceptions on a sixth dimension or a seventh dimension. So in a way, I feel it's not fair to them. But what I will say to you that I know of is that, yes, you have to thy own self be true. You have to know your own self first before you really, and part of the development process is knowing who you are, having that strong sense of self, and understanding the different levels which exist, and the worlds within worlds within worlds, because there are many. So even if you say we bring your higher self, well, we could also say, yes, you bring it through guides and influence of guides that are around you. And then we remember that guides have guides who have guides who have guides.
Yes.
So it's that one step. And that's something we have to be mindful of as well.
And these guides could be past life aspects of yourself as well. We may
bet.
Yeah, we may see it. We the framework that our understanding of the framework right now of even the books that you've written as well, and any books that are out there, I do say to myself nowadays, maybe even that framework is not the framework that is. Maybe there's a framework that's even bigger than any understanding that's ever been written about, because it's beyond our conceptualization to bring it through, or man's not ready for that beyond the knowledge type of stuff right now.
Very bright. You're a very bright boy. I was just, again, writing this book. It's called The Guidebook, which is coming out next year. And it was like an inverted pyramid when I was trying to give the concept of what is it like to be in touch with that other world with guides. And it's like an inverted pyramid where this is just the human, but then it goes out kind of like the inverted pyramid. There's more than more and more. And when I first started sitting in that development group, one of the first experiences I had clairvoyantly was a vision of exactly that. And I was like, wow, there's so much there. There's so much there. We couldn't possibly grasp it. And I think it's really, really important for students of mediumship, not only to look from their point of view, but let's look at the spirit point of view. So how hard is it from them to come down to this level? What is it like in their world? We should have a natural curiosity to explore their world and see what it's like, because I think that'll affect the quality of our mediumship.
And, when we say wills, there's probably infinite levels, and I can't get my head around infiniteness, levels for the soul to progress to. So just to say there's 10 levels or 8 levels.
I love that because people say, I've read it in books like, oh, stop it, I can't take it. Because they say, we have 44 guys and there are 742 levels to go to. And like, how can you say that? That's so human of you. And now I'm in a lot of work with human of you, because it's human of us. When the spirit world came through to me, Kevin, and they said, because a lot of people ask me this question of how does the spirit world see our earth? And I try to tell this to people that they understand. It's hard for us to comprehend. But they say, James, when you look at the earth world to us is like a grain of sand on the beach.
Yeah, and
with all the other grains of sand.
I mean, you just can't get that in your head, can you? The infiniteness of it. And, something, I do channel. I've been channeling for a year. The gift came to me a year ago.
Obviously.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Well, I've been working on it, and I've not, I would be too scared to go out there in public and give any readings. I'm not ready for that yet. But I tell you what, I said, well, look, if this is a true gift and I've tested it, I don't want to do a normal book. I want to look at beyond the current understanding of mankind kind of material. Whether that's what people need, I hope it isn't, because a lot of the stuff that comes through, isn't it, for people, it's about just getting through the life as it is now. Even love's a big one, isn't it?
So I'm thinking of things and you say them. So it's a great show. So it's a couple of things you said, which is great points. Number one, how do we get our heads wrapped around that the concept of worlds within worlds, and with a grain of sand? The one unifying energy that brings all of that together is the energy of love. Love is the only thing that's real. Love is the energy, the unifying force in all those levels, which is the same, is love. So we might see just maybe 5% of what love is, but love is the answer. I think, then going back to what you just said about you channeling, I think you cannot, number one, worry about what the world needs. Okay, because then that's the human getting involved. That's the ego. You need to give out and write and express, or whatever your soul's expression needs to come out, and that will reach the people that it needs to reach, who are ready to hear that level of understanding. I'm not saying it's better or worse or good, but it's your soul's expression that needs to let itself out there, and never worry about what other people think, because what other people think of you is none of your business.
That's so true. That is God. Right. Okay. Yes. Thank you for that so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, some of the chapters. I mean, I'm not talking about myself, but anyone can bring this through. So let's just sum this up really quickly here. What I'm doing, anyone can do. What you with the gift that you've got, just to communicate to spirit, to ask it any questions, you can do. Just go in that quiet moment, meditate, ask, and just try to cut the noise chatter and just see what comes through. And if it's your voice coming through and it's of wisdom and love, then just go with it and ask a little bit more and practice.
Correct. That curiosity of a child, yeah. It's an art of discovery, isn't it? It's that phrase came to me 2 days ago, and I love it, called the art of discovery. And it's really what it is, isn't it? It's art of discovering the various aspects of your soul, and bringing that, as you say, channeling, as bringing that high energy down to the human level, and that hopefully people understand. But I think if they're ready, they will. I think in their souls they recognize truth.
Oh yes, yeah. Yes. And whenever you meditate and something's coming through, if it's not coming from love, it's not coming from spirit or yourself or anything else. It's
usually coming from the ego or the human.
Yes.
So when I do a class and I'm about mediumship, and somebody says, "Oh, I just can't do it. I said, "Well, it's not about you. So it's not about you. So your intention is wrong, because it's about spirit." And you have to just shift the way of thinking, because we're so, again, programmed to believing a certain way and thinking. And that's funny, because as we talked about earlier, I use my sense of humor a lot for people, because, again, it opens them up, it breaks down defenses. And I'll walk around a classroom and I'll say, okay, you're thinking, I'm smelling brain cells burning here, because getting from the head to the heart, for a lot of people, it's hard, because so many people are not used to using their feelings, and they really, in order to survive, they had to use their rational thinking. And this is one world, as you know, You can't think about it. You just have to be in it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I would never have been doing the channeling had I had any form of ego, because the minute you do this kind of stuff, or do the work that you do as well, ego doesn't come into it, because why would you put yourself in that space to be publicly humiliated, in a sense? You're doing it because it's the right thing to do, because someone out there needs your help through the energy and information you're going to bring through. You're of service, as Edgar Casey would say.
Oh my God, Edgar Cayce! I have a great Edgar Cayce story for you. And I'll tell you in just a second here. But that's the number one. Service is what it's about. And again, every class that I teach, for one of the first things I ask is, why do you want to be a medium? Why are you doing this work? And I said, do you want to be famous on television? Do you want to be well known about this? And if people raise their hand, I say, well, I think number one, you're coming from the wrong space, because oh, my doggies are barking.
Okay.
Because you're not really coming from the spirit space. You're coming from that ego space to satisfy the ego. So what's that about? When you do the work, spirit is in charge, and there's a divine design going on, and they will make things. They said to me 35 years ago, James, if you do this work, and I was at the time working for Paramount Studios, making a lot of money as a contract manager for their syndication shows. And I remember those were my first experiences that I had. And I remember that development circle. I sat there, and the spirit said to my first guide, who was, by the way, a Londoner from the 1930s, a doctor, and he came through and he said, if you work with us, we will always take care of you. You will never have need, but you have to give us your mind and your soul. And I said, yeah, I do that, because there was such a strong energy of this love, this energy that I knew could heal people, and I loved working with it, as you know what that's about. And that was really what it is. And the rest of it takes place. It doesn't, It's great.
The more people I interview now with channeling, I just want to clear this up with yourself as well. Something that's in my head is that there's a lot of channels in the past that would say that this aspect's coming through, or this person's coming through, or that entity's coming through. Nowadays, it's all changing. Nowadays, they're taking responsibility, just as I am, and saying it's coming from my higher self. I'm powerful enough and lovable enough to myself to say it comes from myself. When we say sometimes like it's coming from another aspect, like it's coming from, if I was to say the one, for example, it took me a while to realize when I was doing that, actually, the one is me. They're past life aspects of me. I just wasn't in love with myself enough to realize I had that power. And that's the shift I'm seeing. There's a shift in the way this information is coming through. So even the word channeling is kind of the wrong word, but that's my closest reference to it, in a sense. I still think there's something separate, but it's all one. It's undescribable in a way, but I like
that, and I think that instead of channeling, let's use the word connection.
I like receiving, connection,
receiving, because it's really the concept we have of human beings, the concept of the human. It's just so finite, it's so linear, and we're not that way at all. We are right. This is a great one. You might like this also. This has come up recently in my radio shows I've done, and the spirit world say that this human body is 20% of our soul. 80% of the soul is outside of the human body. So really, wow. And it's so true, as you know.
Wow. Well, when you bring this information into your books, and wonderful as they are, that's coming from you, but it's that highest part of you, because you don't know what you're going to write sometimes, do you? You never...
No. It really is. It's almost like I have a vision, like they're, if they take a shovel in the spirit world, and they're just putting it into the well, the hole, and it falls down here. I think that they feed us all the time. They influence us every moment, spirit world. And again, the more open we are, the more we're able to receive. So I know when I'm writing these books, it's just like, as you know, would you say channeling or receiving this information? And I'll be writing, I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Wow, I wouldn't think of that. And it's like, and that happens a lot. I just did it before the show, and I was writing this paragraph about guides, and it was this some of how the messages come through with them. So it's very in alignment with what we're speaking about. So I think people should realize that they're always being helped. We're always working in unison and alignment with our guides, higher teachers, inspirers. And I think that's if people have that awareness that they're doing it with them. We do it together. We don't do it by ourselves. Just like we don't live this world with ourselves. We're always surrounded by spirit, whether guides or loved ones. They're always with us, and we share the space. I always say we walk, with our soul self, and that's really, we got to be with our soul self constantly, which is part of the all, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Was there any sort of material back in the day that really influenced you, like the Seth material or anything like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I first had that reading by Brian Hurst, a medium from England who was living in the States then, and I knew nothing about the subject matter, he brought through this information and he said, he gave that reading. I could not stop getting as much material as I could possibly find on mediumship. There was a wonderful bookstore here in the U.S. and in Los Angeles, and it's called the Bodhi Tree, and it's no longer in existence now. But it was really, really great at the time, and it had all different books on life after death, on paranormal, on psychic phenomena, on past lives, on astrology, alternative healings. And this is back in the early 80s. So it was way before its time in some way. But I used to go there every weekend and just read, read, read. I was very, very involved with the Edgar Cayce information. I read all the Seth material, which I liked the Seth material. But I also read Emmanuel's book, which was one of the first channeled materials by Pat Rodegast, and I really loved it. And I felt in my heart, this feels right. And then I got to meet her, which was like incredible.
Wow.
And she was so down to earth and so real. And so Edgar Cayce, I started what's called the Association of Research Enlightenment. That's his organization. And they had support groups all over, I think it's the world, chapters all over the world. And I started one in Los Angeles, and it's reading all the materials and so forth. And it worked, and that was, I loved it. And so eventually then I got my mediumship, and that I put that to the side. I'm a big book collector. I collect all information, and I have a huge library. Not that I've read every book, but I just like to be in that information. I'm sure you're the same way, right?
Yeah,
You just
absolutely.
love to have it around you.
Yeah.
So a really great story, really quickly about Edgar Cayce was I hold him up on a pedestal there because right before his time when he was channeling, I was invited to go to the Association of Research and Enlightenment down in Virginia Beach, and there was a benefit that I said I would do because of the information
Great
from
place.
Edgar. So this is about 10 to 15 years ago. I went down there. It was 2 plane rides away. It was a really hard place to get to. It's in the middle of nowhere. And I got there. It was for a Sunday event, and it was they can only fit 250 people in the room. It was packed. People waiting out the door.
Wow.
And it was a nice event, but no one from Edgar's family, the grandson, you never came to say thank you. And I was like, I came all this way, and it was not even just a thank you. I'm not getting paid or anything, to say thank you. That's all I wanted. So that night I went to bed, and I had to get up very early again because of the planes I had to take. 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in that twilight state. And at the end of my bed, I'm just about my eyes open, but they're not. And I see a tall figure at the end of the bed, and it was wearing a white jacket and long arms, long arms. And I'm not sure, I'm like, was that? And he's holding a white coat too, and he comes around to the side of the bed. Said, oh, "You're Edgar Cayce," because I looked, I recognize that's Edgar Cayce. He goes, "Yes, I'm Edgar Cayce." I said, "Wow!" And he said, "Thank you, Dr. Van Praagh." And I said, "Oh, I'm not a doctor." And he said, "Yes, you are a doctor. I want to give you this jacket. You are a doctor." And I said, "Why would you call me a doctor?" And he said, "Because you've helped to heal many hearts." And he gave me this jacket, and it's all in my mind taking place. And then he said to me, "You have arthritis in your right knee. Please refer to reading whatever, 2931 for a remedy." And sure enough, I told the support staff who picked me up and bring me to the airport, and they sent me that, of course, that reading.
Oh, my God.
And I used it, and it worked.
Wow, isn't that so beautiful? He came to see you to say how many hearts you had fixed. Now, oh, that's so... Yeah. And the reading, oh my God. Well, I'll tell you... Well, okay, it was Edgar that came to me when I had not a breakdown, but, you know, it was at that point where I lost everything. That's when the channeling started. And it was Edgar that came to me in that space, only because I'd been working with the ARE, which I'm still working with now. I produced their weekly television show. And I thought, well, I've got to be making this up. I just want that to be true, that he's come through. And I just want that. It just makes so much sense. But it was, I can only say as a year or more's gone by, I know that to be true now. So I can understand your truth in what you're saying as well. You can't prove it to no one, except...
It's great to be that way, though, Kevin. You have to be that way. If you would just said, oh, this is definitely him, you have to be a little skeptical. You got to be open-minded, but skeptical in a way, because you got to prove it in some ways. It's got to be proven, I believe, because you're only as good as what you're giving to people. You know, you got to be, you got to have integrity there, and you do. So that's a
I've
good way
been
to be.
fighting it all the way, I tell you, all the way to the bank. I've been kicking and screaming writing this first book. I swear to God. I done a chapter not too long ago about, the nature of reality when it comes to hauntings. How that most hauntings are past life aspects of those people that they come in contact with, attracted to the person that's in the living, in a sense. And it's that attraction, that magnetism that they find. And it's like, that can't be true. And then I came across something in the Seth material. Never read it before in my life. And there was something along the same lines. I'm like, my God, it can't be true. Have I brought some... there's all these little things. I was in front of a medium not too long ago, and they say, it comes up to me, in an audience environment, and they says, oh, yes, the person sat next to you there, I've got to tell you, there's a book to write. You've got to write this book. It's going to help a lot of people. That's what I've got to tell you. And I was like, he doesn't even know me. Do you know what I mean? He came up, and I was like, well... Okay, if you're not going to get the message, Kev, you really shouldn't be here, right? So, and I want everyone just to see what I'm saying, to reflect that back on themselves. That spirit communicates all the time with us, and they want to communicate.
And it's really, really interesting what you said, because like attracts like. And again, here we go, worlds within worlds. So it's particles and particles and particles and particles. And that what you believe, like you say, you're a magnet and you will attract to you. So that level of awareness, that's what you'll attract to you. So if people are going to get involved in hauntings and ghosts, and so, yes, those are fragments which on a certain level that would exist. And the more energy you give it, the more it becomes alive. But and of course, it just goes beyond that. But I definitely believe there are emotional charges of past life experience, yes, especially when there are emotions that are involved. I just recently went to the Winchester Mystery House, and that's San Jose, California. And that was, for those who don't know, Sarah Winchester was married to the man that family created the Winchester rifle. And supposedly this Victorian house, 1890s, early 1900s, he died. He died right after they were, right after they were married. He died. That child also that passed. So there were two deaths there. She never got over that. She mourned them, and she was said. Well, the folklore is that she's been haunted by the spirits of people that were killed by those rifles, and the Winchester rifles. And so they said the whole place is haunted. She started building rooms upon rooms, and that lead nowhere, and staircases that lead nowhere, because this is how she was going to appease the spirits. Well, this is what I went up there about 2 months ago to go look at and to do a tour. So I walked in and was like, okay, what do we expect here? Because, of course, I worked on the show. I created the show Ghost Whisperer, so I have a little bit of background in this world. And I walked into the house, and it wasn't haunted at all. It was the cleanest place I've been to, one of the cleanest haunted places I've ever been to. And Sarah, the lady, did come in. And the thing that she said with it was very fascinating. She loved the tour guide, because she said the tour guide is getting everything right. And I'm so happy with this tour guide. I think her name is Teresa. Teresa got everything right. And one thing she said, and we went to each room, and Sarah would be listening, and she'd watch, and she would say, I used to pull the blinds down all the time here. Or I used to have a little rocker over there, and the back she described the back of the rocker. Or she said, I want Teresa to find this old American flag from the 1900s, and because it used to be hanging there. It was such interesting stuff. But she wasn't creepy. She wasn't haunting. No. It was nothing like that. But how much do we as humans place a lot of our own stuff onto these spaces and create stuff? It's like, ooh, the haunted castle. And I've been to a lot of places in England and Europe. Yes, there is some residual, no doubt about it, without a doubt. And really some Civil War battlefields here in this country. And yeah, you can feel the remnants of that emotional charges, no doubt about it. And I think there are parts of us sometimes get stuck when they first leave that body, especially if there's an emotional charge. I also find that people don't have a sense of time, because they're no longer in linear time. So sometimes they get stuck kind of in that cycle, and they're not out of it. So that I find that to be true as well.
Absolutely. And we've spoken a lot about bits about your truth, bits about mine as well. But everyone's got their own unique individual truth, except for religion in a sense. But outside of religion, everyone seems to have their own truth about this and that. And it seems that when we go back home, we're still allowed to express that truth. It's almost like when we go home, the spirits on that side, the true nature of who we are, the soul, is still trying to find its own truth. And it's almost like if there's infinitive levels, our souls on different levels are sort of communicating to each other to find their truth and truth beyond that. So there's no defining truth. We're trying to find that truth, and it's a journey throughout life.
There's no end to life. There's no end to life. So we're constantly evolving and learning and growing and expanding. And life is about movement and expansion. That's what it's about. So there is no end. It's just a journey. It's a journey, whether it's in the human condition, moving on to the ethereal levels or celestial levels, and finding out, having those experiences. Again, the humans are so black and white. It's got to be a beginning, middle, and end. No, not necessarily. It's a movement. It's an expansion. And what I say, it's helped me a lot, Kevin. It could help a lot of people here, is whenever I talk to people, I say on a human level, every single day, we as soul beings are given an opportunity to recognize the God within every person. Recognize, we're going to call God love God. I'm not putting a religious connotation to God. I'm just saying love. You could find that light, that love within every person. And I think what part of our responsibility, especially as spiritual-minded people here and teaching people spirituality, is to help people to recognize that light in somebody else, to recognize their truth. There's a commonality we all have. The two greatest illusions we have in this three-dimensional world, one being death. There is no death. And the second is a sense of separatism. We're separate when we're really not. We're connected. We're exactly the same. We have different faces and come from different countries or speak different languages. And that's just the physical, because we have to go through various lessons to learn. But within, that light is the same within everyone. The degrees of light might be a little different, but that light is still there. And I think that's part of our job down here, is to recognize that light within everyone, celebrate those differences, because God, in His wondrous way, is all diversified, is just wondrous, all just gleaming lights and degrees of that light. So I think that's what our job too is, to celebrate the diversity in everyone.
Well, here's a bit of a tough question. May it be tough for yourself, because you may have already find an answer for this quite quickly.
No tough questions, Kevin. Just tough people.
Okay, when something happens like it did in Florida this past weekend, the greatest mass shooting in history, and now it looks like the guy as well was bi-curious in a sense, was fighting his own wants as well. Yeah, he was gay in a sense, and he was in denial. He was also radically radicalized by extremism as well. Match those two together, you got the perfect pot. Yeah. And he goes and changes all those lives overnight. Now, I'm trying to forgive him, right? And so are many others. I know it's brought a lot of people together, this event has, right? But is it just a case of saying, well, I forgive you, brother,
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to forgive, especially it's a really hard thing to forgive, because life is a gift. And when we take that gift, we just get rid of someone's gifts, it's like, it's really, really hard. It's really, I don't know. It is a tough question, because every situation is so different. I can say my experience, and I did a radio show last night. I dedicated my show to them, because, my God, I know what it's like when you go to a gay bar. It's like you first, and I know, being a gay man, I know what it's like when you first go to these places. Like, it's a place you all can meet, you feel safe, and to have this happen, I think it just goes to the question that the mind can be ill, can be sick. I think that whether it's through religion, whether it's through programming, whether it's through fear, which is false ego appearing real, and based on fear, a lot happens. And the spirit world, they say the truth is so simple, but the humans get caught up in the complexity of the simplicity. The truth is very simple, but we as humans make it much more complex. And I think it's, as they say, thoughts are things, thoughts are real. So when you take a soul, who I think this guy, probably from a young age was very sensitive, but he was a gay individual, very pure light, whatever. He just very open, and was fed doctrine, was programmed a certain way, was programmed hate and fear, and didn't want to act out on that, because religiously, religion. I believe there are many, many paths to the light, and there are many good things about religion. And there's also some bad things in that when religion gets twisted and poisoned, and then the human power gets in the way, the manpower, the ego gets involved with religion, then the bad things happen. And I was raised Catholic, I know, and I respect everyone's religion, but I'm going to say something. Like the Vatican, when I go to Italy and Rome, I can't go near it, because it just... all that money and all that wealth. Like, wait a minute, let's stop and just give that money to all the poor nations and do that. What's the hypocrisy here? So, I think that all religions are the truth, but not any one religion has all the truth. And I think when the human part aspects of the manpower, the human power gets involved, it poisons it. So I think it's hard because I think everybody has free will. I really do. And I think that just like this situation that happened, that man's free will destroyed those lives. And unfortunately, I think it was because those weeds in his mind, the poison ivy in the mind got to him. And that's why it's important that every single one of us opens up the mind and cleans out that garden, weeds the garden every once in a while, clears out the limitations of the mind, clears out the fears. That's why meditation is important. Aligning yourself to spirit, aligning yourself to love and truth, and recognizing there's all different ways of life, and spirit comes in all different levels. So how can we use it? Well, we can use it to show this is not the right behavior. Can we forgive the person? It's a hard one. It's a hard one, but it's really, really hard. I can only go based upon I feel sorry for that soul. I feel empathy for that soul. I know those loved ones will continue on. I send a lot of light to the kids in the bar, because many of them probably have no awareness of what the heck just happened, because they were dancing, or they probably thought it was part of the music, and they may be still wondering what's going on. They don't realize they're dead. Some of them, I don't know. I mean, I just, that's more I'm concerned for that. This is an interesting story. Years ago, I sat in a development circle with my friend Jordy, who to me is one of the most incredible people I've ever met. Met her just not by accident, but she came into my life when she lost her son. And we sat in a development circle, and we sit in quiet. And then after an hour, we go around to each person and we share what we got. And I said, Jordy, it was really strange. I saw this man kneeling down in front of you. He looked Middle Eastern, and he was bowing before you and thanking you and thanking you. And I said, he looked a little familiar. And she said, oh, I know who that is. She said, that's one of the pilots that went to the World Trade Center. I said, well, and I was shocked, the human part, why? She said, because I prayed for his soul. The moment that happened, I knew everybody would be praying for the victims, but no one would be praying for him. So I prayed for him too, because we're all God's children. Taught me a lesson.
God, yeah.
Not easy.
No.
Not easy.
Beautiful, though.
But then also, right?
Yeah, beautiful.
Not easy one. Not easy one. Not just because you can forgive somebody, doesn't mean you condone their behavior. So you have to remember that. It's two very different.
That is very true. Yeah. Do you think though? I mean, he had free will not to do that. Of course he did. And look, I have a lot of good gay friends as well, and I can't imagine. I mean, I was only at the gay club just a few months ago when I went to Cardiff to see my friends. I can't imagine what that would have been like, and why. But look, the thing is. I always say to myself recently, everything happens for a reason, and then I try to put that in the context of that, and maybe on a bigger picture, those souls have sacrificed themselves, which they chose to do before they came down. And I would not say that to the family members, because it would be too harsh to hear that. But what if they did for the learning that comes of it and the forgiveness? I mean, this was a planetary thing. This was, in a sense, this event. Everyone felt it. So look at what's good has come of
you're
it.
really smart, and I'm agreeing with you. And I don't know. We won't know until we go. We don't know, but let's hope that's it. But I know that for me, I've always been connected to World War II, always. And in some way, I've been obsessed with it. Anything about Nazi Germany, World War II, I'm there. I'm right there because I'm fascinated. And I don't know. Of course, I had 50 of my own relatives die in Auschwitz, which is really interesting. But I'm fascinated with Germans. I love Germans. I don't know what the story is of the German thing. So I know there's a past life there, no doubt about it. And I don't know if the millions of Jews and other people that passed over there in that situation, maybe they were very evolved beings who said, we're going to sacrifice ourselves in order to teach humankind this is not what you do. Is that a possibility? I think it is. It's not easy for a lot of people to swallow as humans because of the emotions, and it's a wrong thing to do. But there is a possibility in the bigger scheme of things, sure. Well, of course there's a possibility. I think it all comes down to love. I think it comes to love, learning the different aspects of love. How to love. Can you? Now, this is another interesting one. I'm throwing this out. We're not telling anyone to live a certain way or be a certain way. We're throwing this out. I did a reading for a young lady once, years ago, and her grandmother came through. And the grandmother said, when she first went to the spirit world, she said, it was a very interesting time. I met one of my teachers or my guides, whatever she called them, and he brought me to a hospital setting. She said, wouldn't be like hospitals on the earth, but it was a place with a lot of light was coming through, but there were kind of rooms or beds that people were there, but they were all sleeping. And he brought me to this one bed, and the guide said, you need to forgive this person in order for them to wake up. And she said, I don't know that person. And the guy said, take a stronger look. Well, and she did. And she was shocked. And she said, that was the Nazi soldier that killed me.
Wow, and that must have been still imprinted on this life. There was something in this life that she hadn't healed, in a sense, and she needed to see that. Wow. My God.
And I don't know if in another lifetime she didn't kill him.
Oh, yeah. That's,
and we know,
right.
Karma.
Okay.
We don't know that. We have to learn from all different levels and all different aspects and both sides of the coin. And
have you ever met anyone that you really couldn't stand and you don't know why? Because they seemed there was nothing wrong with them. They'd never done anything wrong to you.
Sure. I worked in Hollywood.
yeah, those people. Yeah, I can understand that.
Now I do.
Yeah.
I think we all have met some people.
But
or
it's
someone
a
that
past
just
life
the
thing.
wrong way. Energetically, there's something not right. It's like,
yeah.
Sure. It's hard for me to remember right now, but I'm sure now in my life that's happened, and all of ours, and also different places that we go to, whether it's at different locations. I went to Turkey once, and I was on a cruise. I was doing Turkey. And I was so uncomfortable. And I knew I was beheaded there once in a past life. I was so traumatized, I wouldn't get off the cruise ship, because I was so traumatized. And then I was in that port, and I kept on seeing like these bloody visions, and it traumatized me. So I knew I'd been there. There are different places in the world I know I've been to. I have no desire to go to the Asia. I have no desire to go to China, because I know I've had many lifetimes there. Good or bad, whatever. I feel like it's almost like I feel like I've done that part of the world, that place. I've done that. Africa, I've never had any desire to go to Africa. I'd be able to go to South Africa. I have no desire. Not good or bad. It's just like I feel like it's almost like I've done that school. I've done that class, I guess. The United States, it's an interesting place. It's a new world, this new United States. I go back to Europe, and I feel very connected to Europe. I feel very much I lived many lifetimes there, without a doubt. No doubt about it. I'll go to Paris. I'll know certain streets exist. I go to England, and we go through London. London's changed quite a bit through the centuries, I will say, because there are times now I go to London, I'm like, that used to be there, and I ask someone who lives there, and they say, how do you know that? And I said, I just know it. And it was things. Streets have changed. Things. So it's pretty interesting.
Incredible. Yeah, it's incredible what you say there about the past life aspects as well. That the attraction. I feel a massive attraction to want to end up in the US in the future, and I don't know why. I just feel that I need to go there, or I've been there before. I don't know what it is, but it's also interesting what you said about the losing of your head, and I think the way we die in previous lives have something to do with the way that we were caught up in different issues, and maybe that the losing of a head is also a symbolism of being stuck in the head, being stuck in the logical side. Maybe I don't know.
That's an interesting. That's what interesting way of looking at it. Yeah. I know we all as souls have got to many myths, and because you and I do spiritual type of work. It lends itself to saying we have a lot of different types of experiences and different types of deaths and different types of belief systems and religions and so forth, because we wouldn't do the work we're doing right now if we hadn't had all those experiences. So it's ingrained in our souls, and there's a soul memory, and many people have anxieties or worries or fears and irrational fears. Many times we can draw back to past life experiences, because I do a lot of past life regression. I worked with Dr. Brian Weiss, who did Many Lives, Many Masters, a good friend of mine, and we worked for many years together. And I've done many regressions with Brian and separate from Brian, and it's so true. It comes through in that soul experience of that the soul always knows. The human is just a small part of who we are, and when we leave that body, look down, it's like. A lot of people say, wow, I'm so much more than that human body. Yeah,
absolutely. And I know we're nearly out of time. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And also, there's so many directions we could go here. But, also that past, present, and future it seems to be, from what my understanding, it's all happening at once. If that is the
Parallel
case,
lives.
yeah. If that is the case, then past lives are affecting present incarnation maybe, and potentially a future life is as well. I don't know that there maybe is a connection with it all, and what we do now can heal the past, or what we do now could change the future or heal the future. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying there's possibilities.
I agree with you. The thoughts that you have, the thoughts that you create. So that's why we say love is very, very important. So if we can use love right now, and life is a series of choices. That's all it is. Life is a series of choices. Every day we have choices, and choices are based upon two things: either love or fear. And even though we might be programmed or patterned to believe a certain way, and things come up with, we are afraid of them, or fear jumps up, we have to stop, pause, take a few breaths, and okay, wait, I can use love or fear. And the more we start using love, that unifying force, it will heal past experiences and future experiences. I do believe there are parallel lives. I really do. I don't know enough about quantum physics, but I know that what we do now is an opportunity to affect the past and the future.
Absolutely. And we should, if we've got issues that we're dealing with, which we all have in a sense, some issues that we've never talked about before, but we know they're there, there's nothing wrong with healing our dark side and bringing it out.
I'm sorry, you talk about soul lessons.
Well, yeah. Well, in the sense that, we want to bring these issues out sometimes, and
Sure.
and we don't need to take them into the next life then, or at least forget about past and present, past and future, just about now. It's, at least you can live the most positive and empowered life now as well by healing them.
I'd like to say what I love to leave people with too is that, if you go, when you leave this earth, I think a successful life is when you live this earth, you go home, when you leave the physical body, you look back. If you can look back at the life you just lived, and you leave the earth a better place than when you found it, it's a successful life. That's what I live by.
That's a beautiful thing, and that would also mean, don't care about what other people may think of the things that you do, as long as what you're doing is not hurting anyone else or yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
What you do from love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People might not understand. It's like what I do. The skeptics come out all the time, like, "Oh, you can't do this," or "Oh, you do." I'm like, no, that's not my world. That's not my belief system. That's not where I come from. So your stuff is your stuff. That's not my stuff. So it's interesting, but every day we're dealt with that. Now, the more evolved we become spiritually, the more aware, the universe will test us, and we'll have more people rubbing against us and saying, okay, what's going on here? So the universe will force us to look at ourselves and our genuineness and our integrity all the time, I think.
And do you find sometimes that lives can go in circles, that you were doing something in the past and then it catches up with you in the sense that you're going back to re-heal it in a sense? Your life's gone full circle in ways that you couldn't ever dream of.
Yeah, very, very much so. Very, very much so. Then you come back full circle, and you're like, wow, I look at this so differently now. And it's so interesting because they're like people, let's say people go through, in the old days, they used to have an address book. They used to have a diary where they used to keep people's names. And if you go back to those like 10 years, looking at 10 years ago, it's like, wow, that person used to be one of my close friends, and I have no charge with them anymore. I don't feel anything anymore. It's because we've evolved, we've changed, we've grown. Good or bad, we've grown out of the experience, and that's exactly what happens. And we'll go full circle to it and see it. And it's almost like when you move away from a certain location, then you go back to visit that location years later, and you go, wow, it served its purpose at the time, but I no longer need it because I've grown, my awareness has changed, things have changed. I no longer need that. That helped me to get to where I am today.
And sometimes you can find yourself going back to that place a completely different person. And in the sense that you might move back there temporarily because that's where you need to be, but you're not the person you was before. You go back there with a different spirituality.
Isn't it interesting that when you go, sometimes you go back to a place like, that saying, "Oh, you should never go back to your past," and it's sometimes really, really true because you have learned everything you can, even sentimental stuff. Even when I went back to my childhood house in my town, and not only was it smaller than I remember, but it was like, yeah, I've been there, done that. And it's like, I experienced that now. No longer need to go through that. And that was a very different time and awareness, and such a different person now. It's like, again, with the saying, with the expression that people say when they get older, "Oh, if only I knew now, if I only knew then what I know now, I would have lived a very different life." But that's what it's about. That's why we're here in this schoolroom called Earth, to learn.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, how can people get in contact with yourself? Because for the UK, for example, you're coming over this year as
Yeah,
well.
I'm going in October. Southport. Wait, here I have it right in front of me because I can't remember anything anymore. Yes, I will be there at the Southport. Where is it? I wrote it down. Oh, no, here it is. Okay. Okay, I'm going to be there in the Southport Theatre Convention in Southport, UK, and it's going to be November 2nd, Wednesday, November 2nd, 7:30. And people can find out more about me on my website, which is www. You don't have to say that anymore, do you? People realize that. It's vanpraagh.com, vanpraagh.com, or also my Facebook page, my public page of like 500,000 people on there. And I go on there every hour and post, so. And also, I have a radio show on Hay House Radio, and another one called UBN Radio. We just started 3 weeks ago, and we have like 800,000 people tuning into that one on a weekly level.
That is impressive. Well, that just goes to show a lot about yourself as well. No, we've been putting your website and your books on the screen all throughout this interview as well.
Thank you.
I
love to visit you again. If you would have me again, I'd love to come back.
Definitely. Look, all I want to say is, James Van Praagh, thank you so much for the time and the wisdom that you've shared with us today. It's so appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Nice speaking to you and your audience. Okay, bye-bye.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.com. And do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.